This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Do you want to play games like this, but don't have time to pack up and move to Japan? Well, ditto, but what if I told you that you could just use a VPN service to connect to the internet in Japan, or anywhere in the world for that matter, from wherever you are on the globe, completely bypassing any region lock. Not to mention that using a VPN in your personal life can help to protect you and all of your sensitive information by blocking malicious websites and encrypting all, and I mean all, of your data, like payment or login information that you'd rather keep hidden from the many eyes of the internet. And with NordVPN, you get the absolute top of the line VPN experience with unrivaled speeds and connectivity with which to accomplish all of this with just the tap of a button, no matter what device you're using. If you want to check out NordVPN and help the channel, click the link in the description below to get an exclusive NordVPN deal. It's completely risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee if you don't like it, but you will. And now, on to the video. Hey everyone, Bandit here. Five Nights at Freddy's security breach is confusing. To quote Mr. MatPat from Game Theory, Steel Wool seems to have just thrown a bunch of Fazbear lore stuff at a wall to see what sticks. And that is super true of literally every location and character in this entire game, including an infamous area room thing known as the Staff Bot Silo, which features a bunch of weirdly cryptic sticky notes and a small group of staff bots seated at a table upstairs, hence its name. As for the sticky notes, that may or may not have already been solved depending on when you're watching this video, but I'd like to turn our attention instead to the Staff Bot Table Group. Now, lots of hardcore FNAF theorists have already seen this group of bots and know what it is that they strongly seem to represent. But for those of you who may have not seen this area yet, since the sewer area is optional depending on how you complete the game, allow me to explain briefly. It is widely accepted that these 5 staff bots represent the 5 members of the Afton family, as in the William Afton family. This is all but confirmed for several different reasons. Numerically, it adds up as there are 2 parents and 3 children, one of which is a daughter. Thematically, it adds up as well, since the daughter very clearly is designed to resemble Circus Baby, who was possessed by Elizabeth Afton, William's daughter, and next to the baby bot is a bot dressed up like a Fazbear Entertainment employee, or Michael Afton, William's oldest son, who has been an employee of the company on a few different occasions, and the last bot, whose head is just missing, signifying it represents the bite victim of 87. Just kidding, I just said that to trigger you. I mean the bite victim of 83, also known as the crying child, also known as William's youngest son, possibly named Evan, or Dave, or Gregory. It depends on who you ask. Finally, the gift box you can open in the middle of this table has an original poster from Fredbear's family diner inside, which is the location where the bite victim of 83 got bit. Now, this Afton bot family scene here is mysterious and interesting, but does it actually give us anything we don't already know? What's to say this isn't just an Easter egg, or perhaps that it was just the mindless work of whoever was living in the silo, giving us information about that person, but not necessarily about the staff bots themselves or what they represent? I'm glad you asked, because there is one very, very, very key detail staring all of us in the face that raises many questions, and that is the confirmed, non-debatable existence and representation for the first time in the entire series of William Afton's wife, Mrs. Afton. Previously, we only had the theoretical connection of Ballora from Sister Location, or the possible representation of a cartoon character known as Clara, Vlad's wife in the immortal and restless TV show that Michael used to watch after his Sister Location shifts while snacking on some much too crunchy popcorn. But whether or not Ballora or Clara from the show actually serve as representations of Mrs. Afton is at present purely speculative. This, however, is not. This is clearly the Afton family, and that is clearly the mother. And what's even more intriguing is the fact that each of these staff bots are represented by actual characters in this very game. Although this is admittedly somewhat theoretical, but hey, what else is new? The magician slash father figure is William Afton, the mad murderous scientist who we can see incarnated in this game as Burntrap underneath the Pizzaplex. Babybot is Vanessa, who is probably Elizabeth Afton. And side note for those who might have missed MatPat's recent theories going in depth on this very subject, in a nutshell, they have the same hair color, the same eye color, their dads are both named William or Bill for short, their last names both start with A, and they even have the same voice actor across games. Now, of course, the question is, if Vanessa is Elizabeth, then how is she even alive in a human body since she's canonically been killed and burned as scrap baby in the fire of FNAF 6? That is another theory that's already been covered by other people, and we're getting off track at this point, so please check out MatPat's other videos if you'd like more information on Vanessa specifically. Moving on, the staff bot that actually looks like staff is represented by Glamrock Freddy in-game, who I do personally believe has the spirit of Michael Afton possessing him, since after Freddy cleared the way to the underground pizza place under command of, quote, she, it's entirely possible that he came into contact with Michael's body, which would have been somewhere down here following the FNAF 6 fire, which could have transferred Michael's spirit into Glamrock Freddy, giving an explanation as to why Freddy is the only animatronic that isn't hostile to Gregory, until he runs out of power, that is. The headless staff bot, also known as the Crying Child, is most likely represented by Gregory. And once again, more on that specific theory in MatPat's recent videos. Every one of the staff bots has a paired living character in this very game. So what about the mother? Let's talk about it. First, what do we know about Mrs. Afton? Not much, let me tell you. In fact, we don't actually know anything about her directly at all. Only details that we can conclude from context and logical deduction. The first of these details comes from one of the retro CDs in Security Breach. CD number 3 features Vanessa talking to a therapist who says this about her mother.
I know your mum after she lost the custody case.
Now, as annoying as it is that Steel Wool decided to just leave us in the dark with Vanessa's mother's fate, clearly it's important, otherwise they would have just let us know. And since it was revealed in this game, that means it could be connected to something in this game as well. The therapist implies very strongly that Vanessa's mom's fate was something very bad, that Vanessa shouldn't blame herself for. This implies something dark happened, like incarceration or even death by suicide. And if Vanessa is Elizabeth, then that means that her mother, Mrs. Afton, met with some sort of terrible fate after the court custody case. Now let's go back to the staff bot silo. Each of these bots is very meticulously dressed up and placed around the table to represent something or someone, and the Mrs. Afton bot is no different. It's strangely seated at the head of the table like a leader figure instead of the father bot, and it also features a nanny looking dress and blue hair and is known in the game files as a nanny bot. But the bigger takeaway from the bot's appearance is the color of its hair. Everything about all of the other bots is deliberate and specific. Baby's hair, Michael's staff clothes, the Crying Child's missing head. So why would the mother bot have blue hair when otherwise it could have just looked like a normal staff bot? Well, I think this ties back into another theory that I mentioned earlier in the video, that the sister location animatronic known as Ballora is meant to either represent or literally be Mrs. Afton. Ballora is the only other animatronic or being in the entire series to have blue hair. So with Motherbot's blue hair and earrings and the maternal design, for lack of a better term, coupled with the fact that Mrs. Afton probably met with some sort of a terrible fate, according to Vanessa's therapy recording, meaning she could have died and possibly taken her own life, I think it might be safe to conclude that this actually confirms the Ballora Mother Afton connection. So here's the next logical question to ask. Where is Ballora? Last we saw the murder ballerina, she had been scooped and added to Ennard's innards, which is really fun to say. Ennard, under control of Baby, scooped Michael's innards out and wore Michael's body to escape from their sister location prison, after which they ejected out of his body at some point and apparently went on to split ways, with Baby separating and becoming Scrap Baby and Ennard being controlled by and becoming Molten Freddy. Keep in mind that Ballora, Mrs. Afton, is still inside of Molten Freddy at this point. As we can see, her iconic purple eye is still attached. As we know, Molten Freddy was melted down and apparently destroyed at the end of the game, so bye-bye Ballora, right? Well, maybe. But if William can come back, and Baby can come back, and Michael can come back, and heck, even the Crying Child can come back, then who's to say that Ballora can't come back? I mean, it's not like death by fire is a very effective method in killing haunted FNAF animatronics, am I right? So, we're going to assume for this video that Mrs. Ballora Afton survived the meltdown of FNAF 6, like all the other members of her family, and is currently at large. Now, let's move past Ballora for a sec and talk about what is perhaps the most confusing part of this confusing game, and that is the blob-like entity known as the Blob. Many fans equate this thing's existence to Ennard, given its location in the FNAF 6 pizza place, which was Ennard's last location, and the fact that it is similar to Ennard since both beings are melted down combinations of other animatronics. However, aside from being a tangle of wires, the Blob actually doesn't have anything in common with Ennard or Molten Freddy. Molten Freddy didn't have any animatronic plates present on its body, except for a very messed up and recolored version of the Funtime Freddy mask. Emphasis on messed up and recolored remastered version, and the blob instead features the literal Funtime Freddy mask in its original glory. There are also the masks of not Scrap Baby but Circus Baby, the original Chica, the original Bonnie, Mangle, and the Marionette, none of which were featured in Molten Freddy. The Marionette is the only one that could understandably have shown up here since it was trapped within Lefty, who burned at the end of FNAF 6 in this very location. But for every other animatronic featured here, their bodies and faceplates were previously located elsewhere. Circus Baby's was located underneath the sister location, inside the underground facility known as Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals.
Circus Baby has already been here today.
And the same goes for Funtime Freddy. The original Chica and Bonnie bodies were located in the burned down location of Fazbear Frights, which was the location of the original murders and the very site where Springtrap was created. The point is, most of these animatronic pieces that make up the blob were previously not here. And at least two of them, Bonnie and Chica, had their spirits set free at the end of FNAF 3 and were no longer haunted, meaning they could not move around on their own anymore. This implies that someone must have brought them here to either make the blob or add to it. Someone that knew where the animatronics were located, including those from the hidden sister location. Now, most people believe that the one behind all the shady shenanigans in Security Breach and the one who Freddy refers to as, quote, she, is none other than Vanny, which would mean that Vanny knows about this area down here and subsequently the blob and even Burntrap Afton himself. I don't think any of that's very hard to believe. In fact, I think most people do believe that. However, what I'm about to start talking about may cause a lot of you to tune me out for good because, forewarning, everything I've talked about up until now has just been the setup for what is perhaps one of the craziest theories ever created about this franchise. So please buckle your seatbelts. It's gonna get wild. Speaking of Vanny, have you ever wondered how exactly it is that she became corrupted or possessed by Glitchtrap? I know there was another beta tester from Help Wanted named Jeremy who went crazy and cut his own face off due to Glitchtrap's influence, but that's more of like a crazy psycho thing where Glitchtrap psychologically tortured the poor little guy until he decided he couldn't take it anymore. I'd hardly say that someone cutting their own face off is proof of being possessed by Glitchtrap. I mean, what would be the point of that plan? Vanny, on the other hand, is literally locked up within her own mind and proceeds to do the will of William Afton, regardless of what she may really think about that. This is possession. But how did Glitchtrap, who exists as a computer virus or data, ones and zeros, manage to possess a living person? I mean, go ahead, stick a flash drive in your mouth and see if you can suck some data out of it. No? Not working? Didn't think so, because humans and machines do not have a way to seamlessly transfer data back and forth, at least not yet. That is the entire reason behind spirits possessing animatronics in this franchise. It's supernatural, not scientific. But I can think of one way that Glitchtrap could possess Vanny, and that would be if Vanny herself is a robot. I know it's getting weird now, but listen, let's just go full circle with this. If William can come back as a robot after death, and the crying child can, and Michael can, why can't the girls in the family, Vanessa and Mrs. Afton? I mean, listen, if Vanessa is Elizabeth, aka Circus Baby, whose scrap body is burned away and original body is within the blob, then for her to exist here, then that must mean that she's either found another animatronic to possess, which we don't see, or more likely a fake body that she's inhabiting, just like Robo Gregory, right? I mean, MatPat himself said that this sort of Terminator-style fake human-robot fusion is actually a thing in the FNAF universe, according to the books. And let me point out one other detail. Remember that confusing Death to Vanny ending where Freddy football tackles her off a roof? Yeah, notice how after Gregory unmasks Vanny, there's no blood to be found? I mean, if Vanny were human, like really human, then a fall like this to the back of her head would result in, well, just ask Spider-Man. But here, she appears to be largely undamaged. And before you say that if she were a robot, the fall wouldn't kill her, remember that Freddy fell the same distance right beside her and died as well, and he's definitely a robot. After the credits roll, we are given another excruciatingly frustrating scene showing Vanessa now on top of the roof gazing down at the dead bodies of Vanny and Freddy. Now I hear you thinking, yeah, Vanessa/Vanny might be a robot, but how does all this tie into Ballora? Isn't that what this video is about? Well, remember how I said that Vanessa would have to have a physical body made for her that she could embody with her Circus Baby innards? Wouldn't you assume that the same would be true for Ballora if she were still alive? Which again, I don't see why she wouldn't be, since literally everybody else in her family has survived in the same way up until this point. Allow me to play one final piece of evidence for the conclusion I'm about to draw.
As I say, you will bring me what I want, and if you fail me, then you will, both of you, burn!
Notice that William Afton is speaking to a, quote, both of you. This implies that there is specifically not one, not three, not four, but two key people that are following William Afton in-game. Now, let me turn your attention once more to that confusing ending with Vanny and Vanessa. It's a very widely accepted notion that this is simply Vanessa's spirit lingering on up here, still attached to the Pizzaplex, implying there is unfinished business to be had since this ending is not actually the true ending. And this is a perfectly fine explanation. Seriously, no harm in believing it. Even I almost believe it. But allow me to raise you another way of looking at it, and that is that this is in fact not Vanny, but rather Vanessa. And I know there are so many signs that point to both of them being one and the same, and I agree, but certain details in this ending just make that a bit harder to believe for me. In the first place, why would Vanessa's spirit not be at her own body? I mean, if you're leaving your body, that implies the starting point is your body, and it's not like Vanessa is tied to the Pizzaplex. She can leave and chase Gregory down to murder him outside the Pizzaplex if she chooses to. Also, we have a very good idea of what exactly spirits look like in this very franchise, and they always look the same. Grayscale, hovering, normally crying, you know, a pretty classic appearance for a ghost in popular culture. Add that to the fact that Vanessa is shown wearing her entire security guard outfit, including her hat, which Vanny was not wearing. So if this was her spirit wearing the clothes underneath her Vanny costume, I don't see where her hat would have come from. Unless it's actually Vanessa who was actually wearing her hat because she's actually working her job right now. Also, this is the natural path that Vanessa would end up on if the building were to catch fire and she were still inside. This is where the fire exit is located after all, and previously she was searching for Gregory inside the building. So I present you with this. What if Vanny and Vanessa are Ballora and Baby, Mrs. Afton and Elizabeth, who were brought back to life with artificial bodies designed to look like the women of the Afton family, explaining why they look similar to one another and neither of them look their age, and who were therefore digitally corrupted by Glitchtrap in order to become his two followers. This explains the weird double Vanessa ending, her facial expression when looking down at Vanny's dead body, William's forgotten trailer dialogue, the sister location animatronics being present in the blob, and most importantly, what happened to Mrs. Afton in the series. But, of course, no one security breach theory is without its fair share of holes. I mean, this would directly contradict every instance that implies Vanny and Vanessa are one and the same, like this one.
Vanny. It is very similar to Vanessa, and also Bunny.
Which is pretty hard to argue with, and it still doesn't quite answer why Gregory would be so mercilessly hunted down by both Vanny and Vanessa. But to be perfectly honest with you, I do think that some lore was introduced in Security Breach that will be retconned inevitably. It just simply cannot fit perfectly right now without large leaps of speculation that nobody actually gets behind. However, with what's been presented to us about Mrs. Afton and the fact that I think she should if she doesn't already have an in-game representative, this is the best I could do. But what do you guys think? Is Mrs. Afton Ballora, who became Molten Freddy, who became Vanny, who was also represented by this nanny bot? Or is Mrs. Afton lost to time, and Vanny and Vanessa are indeed the same individual? Let me know in the comments below. Also, thank you so much for watching, and if this is your first video of mine, thanks so much for being here. Be sure to leave a like if you liked the video, and subscribe to stick around for many more videos to come. Also, huge thanks as always to my bandit crew, and a very warm welcome to Doc T. Pepper, who joined at the top tier. Seriously, thank you so much. You guys are the reason I keep going. That's all I've got for this one, so as always, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. This is Masked Nintendo Bandit, looking forward to seeing you next time, and signing out. Peace!